Chapter 3. Caro Kann defense, Tal challenges the bishop. We will replay the main line and the important sublines, with pauses for tactics. Welcome back to our Caro Kann defense series. In Chapter 1, we saw the birth of the opening idea with Mises against Kann. In Chapter 2, Capablanca showed that black could meet the advance variation with compositional restraint. Now we move to Moscow, 1961, the World Championship rematch between Mikhail Tal and Mikhail Botvinnik. This game changed the conversation around the advance Caro Kann. Tal asked a very direct question: if black's main idea is to develop the c8 bishop outside the pawn chain, what happens if white attacks that bishop immediately? That question begins with the move h4. Your job in this lesson is to understand both sides of the argument. White uses the h-pawn and g-pawn to gain space and chase the bishop. Black retreats the bishop, strikes with c5, challenges the center, and later proves that white's advanced pawns can become targets. e4. c6. Botvinnik chooses the Caro Kann. In this rematch, Botvinnik wanted positions where Tal's attacking imagination could be restrained by structure. The Caro Kann was perfect for that match strategy. d4. d5. Black challenges the center. e5. Tal chooses the advance variation. This is already a statement. White takes space and asks black to prove that the structure is not too cramped. Bishop f5. Black follows the classical Caro Kann recipe, develop the c8 bishop before playing e6. h4. And here is the new question. This move is the heart of the Tal variation. White immediately attacks the logic of black's setup. If black is proud of the bishop on f5, white says, I will spend a flank pawn to make that bishop uncomfortable. Let's see what happens if bishop d3 is played instead of h4. Bishop d3. Bishop takes d3. Queen takes d3. e6. This is the older approach we saw in chapters 1 and 2. White challenges the bishop by exchanging it. Tal's h4 is more ambitious. White does not simply trade the bishop. White tries to chase it, gain kingside space, and create attacking chances. Let's return back to the main line. Botvinnik gives the bishop a retreat square and prevents h5 from trapping it immediately. This move also creates a hook on h6. That hook is important because white can try g4 g5 later. So black is making a useful move, but also accepting long-term kingside tension. g4. Tal continues directly. White attacks the bishop and gains space. The advance variation is no longer only a positional battle over d4 and c5. It has become a fight over the king side. Bishop d7. Botvinnik retreats. At first this looks passive. The bishop has moved from c8 to f5 and then back to d7. But the point is practical. Black keeps the position solid, avoids tactical bishop traps, and prepares to hit the center with c5. Let's see what happens if bishop h7 is played instead of bishop d7. Bishop h7. This is another natural retreat. But after the bishop goes to h7, white often gets ideas with e6, g5, and pressure on the dark squares. The point of the tall variation is that even retreat squares can carry tactical risk. Let's return back to the main line. Tall locks in more kingside space. White now has pawns on h5 and g4. The plan is clear: gain space, limit black's kingside, and later open lines if possible. c5. Botvinnik answers in the center. This is the most important defensive lesson. When white attacks on the wing, black must not only defend the wing. Black must hit the center. c3. White reinforces d4. This is the same advanced structure we know from earlier chapters. White wants the pawn chain to stay intact while the kingside pawns advance. Knight c6. Black develops and adds pressure to d4. Bishop h3. White develops with an attacking idea. The bishop comes to h3 and aims at e6 and c8. Tal wants to make black's development awkward. Black builds the central structure. Now compare this with the earlier advance games. In older lines, black played e6 after developing or exchanging the bishop. Here, the bishop has retreated to d7, but black has gained something else: white has spent time pushing kingside pawns. Bishop e3. Black attacks b2 and d4. The familiar Caro Kann pressure returns. Even in the sharp tall variation, black still uses the classic plan: c5, qb6, pressure on the pawn chain. Queen b3. Tal offers a queen trade. This is a practical decision. If queens stay on, black may get counterplay against b2 and d4. Tal chooses to simplify while keeping his space advantage. C takes d4. Botvinnik first clarifies the center. This move makes sure white's c-pawn is drawn to d4 before the queens come off. Queen takes b6. A takes b6. C takes d4. The queens are exchanged. This is a huge moment. Tal's kingside expansion was ambitious, but without queens, the attack becomes harder to convert. Botvinnik is happy to play a structural game. Knight f5. Black immediately looks for activity. The knight heads towards c4 and b3 squares. Black is not worse just because the bishop retreated. Black has concrete play on the queen side. Knight c3. b5. Botvinnik gains queenside space. This is the counterargument to white's kingside space: black expands on the other wing and creates targets. Bishop f1. White attacks the b5 pawn and tries to reposition the bishop. Tal is still playing actively, but black's queenside pawns are beginning to gain time. b4. Black pushes again and attacks the knight. This is typical counterplay: when white overextends on one wing, black gains time on the other. Knight b5. King d8. Black calmly steps out of possible tactics. The king move also connects the rook later and supports the queenside structure. Knight f3. Knight c4. Black plants the knight on c4. This square is the reward for black's queenside expansion. The knight attacks b2 and e3 and forces white to make another decision. Bishop takes c4. D takes c4. White eliminates the knight, but black recaptures with a pawn and creates a dangerous queenside majority. Notice how the game has transformed. White has kingside space, but black has queenside structure and a clear passed pawn plan. Knight d6. Bishop takes d6. Botvinnik removes the active knight. Black does not allow white's knight to sit on d6 and dominate the position. E takes d6. Bishop c6. Black's bishop becomes active. This is a major strategic turn. The bishop that looked passive on d7 now finds the long diagonal and attacks h1. Knight e5. Tal centralizes and attacks f7. White is still dangerous. Even without queens, white's pieces can create tactics if black is careless. Bishop takes h1. Botvinnik grabs the rook. The bishop reaches h1, and black wins material. This is why the diagonal mattered. Knight takes f7, check. King e8. White wins a pawn with check, but black's king is safe enough. Black has calculated that the material balance and queenside pawns will favor him. Knight takes h8. Bishop e4. White takes the rook, but black's bishop returns to active duty. The position is messy, but black's pieces coordinate well and white's kingside pawns are also targets. d5. E takes d5. White tries to use the passed d-pawn. Black accepts the challenge and opens lines for the king and pieces. Bishop d4. Knight f6. Black develops the knight and attacks h5. This is the beginning of consolidation. Black wants to neutralize white's advanced pawns and then convert material and structure. King e2. King d7. Both kings centralize. With queens gone, king activity matters. Botvinnik's king marches toward the center to blockade and support the passed pawns. Knight f7. King e6. Black attacks the knight and gains time. Tal's pieces are active, but they are also being pushed around. Knight e5. King takes d6. Black captures the dangerous d-pawn. Once this pawn disappears, white's compensation becomes much harder to prove. f3. Bishop h7. The bishop retreats to safety. Black has won the central pawn and is ready to target the kingside pawns next. g5. H takes g5. Tal tries to open lines. Botvinnik accepts. The h-file may open, but without queens, white's attacking chances are limited. h6. G takes h6. Black removes the advanced h-pawn. The very pawns that gave white space are now disappearing. This is one of the main lessons of the game. Advanced pawns can become attacking weapons, but if the attack does not land, they can become weaknesses. Knight f7, check. King e6. Black repeats the king's role: centralize, attack, and keep control. Knight takes h6. Knight g8. Black drives the knight away. The knight on h6 has taken material, but it is far from home. Botvinnik now begins to trap and restrict it. Knight g4. Bishop f5. The bishop comes back to f5. This is a beautiful full circle moment. The bishop that Tal chased on move 4 has survived, traveled through d7 and h1, and now returns to an active square. Knight e3. Bishop g6. Black keeps the bishop safe and maintains control. Knight g4. Bishop f5. Knight e3. Bishop g6. Tal repeats, looking for a way to make progress. But Black's position is solid. The attacking wave has passed. Knight g4. King d6. Black improves the king and prepares to convert. Knight e5. Bishop f5. The bishop remains active. Black controls key squares and keeps White's knight from creating real threats. Knight f7, check. King d7. Black steps back calmly. The game is now about technique. Knight takes g5. Knight e7. Black develops the knight and prepares to bring more pieces into the conversion. White has won pawns, but Black's structure and piece activity are stronger. f4. Knight c6. The knight comes to c6, attacking d4 and supporting the queenside pawns. Black's pieces are finally coordinated. Knight f3. King d6. And White resigned. Black's king, knight, bishop, and queenside pawns are too strong. Tal's kingside attack has been neutralized, and Botvinnik's structure decides the game. As we saw in this lesson, Tal's h4 changed the advance Caro Kann by directly challenging Black's light-squared bishop. Botvinnik answered with h6, bishop d7, c5, queen trades, central pressure, and queenside counterplay. The lesson is clear: wing attacks must be met by central counterplay.